All right, I'm good.
And good evening, everyone. ESS Empire State Sports proudly presents the Wise Guys Sports Talk Show. Your host tonight, Joey Ream, Dave Bartlett, myself, Pete Gosselin, our special guest, Lisa Brown. Welcome to the program, Lisa.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
We were just joking offline. Another St. Lawrence Larry. Oh, blah, blah, blah. So I'll turn it over to the dean himself, Mr. Joey Ream.
Hey, so for our viewers out there that are sick of seeing St. Lawrence Larry's, ask us to come on the show at some point. Hey, we're to that point. You need to start asking. So, and not only is St. Lawrence Central Larry, but a part of my family, my stepdaughter, and well, we'll end up talking about mom at some point, I'm sure, Lisa. But
yeah.
so I'm doing some writing down. You're like our 32nd show. We have had on ADs, athletes, coaches, speakers, announcers, media types. We've had on a team manager. We know who that is. We've had on an Iron Woman. And we've had on a personal trainer. But you are our first athletic trainer.
Fantastic.
So a new topic for us, a new part of sports for us to talk about. And, I'm interested to see where this goes, because my favorite shows, as much as I love my fellow coaches and ADs, my favorite shows are these shows where we get to talk about some things that are away from coaching and being an athletic director. So I'm looking forward to this. So why don't you give our viewers a little history of where you came from, where you grew up, where you went to school, and where you are. I know this is your third different job. So do you want to go through all of that, and then we'll start feeding off of that?
Okay, well, sit back and relax then. Like Joey said, I am a St. Lawrence Central graduate, so I was born and raised in Brazier Falls, New York, right where Joey's sitting, actually. From St. Lawrence Central, I mean, I played sports there. I played soccer, I played softball. Hockey was probably my big sport. Ice hockey was my go-to sport. For the most part, more the sportsmanship award athlete than the go get 'em, stat getter athlete. But there's nothing wrong. You need that person too, I think, from time to time. But hockey was definitely my number one. I did experiment in that for quite a while, and did okay there. After high school and all of that stuff, and realizing maybe the hockey dreams weren't going to go where they planned. After an injury, actually, kind of started to explore where, what college, what kind of career I wanted to get into. Thought physical therapy might be something for me after having physical therapy for my own injury. And that's when I kind of fell into this thing called athletic training. I had never heard of it. I didn't really know what it was, but it was kind of under the umbrella of physical therapy on that whole list of college majors. So I ended up going to Ithaca College for athletic training and really loved what athletic training was. It was akin to physical therapy, but different in a lot of ways. It's really zeroing in on the athletic population and working with injuries from start to finish, and it's been fun. So after my 4 years there, I ended up getting a spot at SUNY Potsdam as a grad assistant. And I spent 10 years at SUNY Potsdam, going from grad assistant to full-time assistant athletic trainer to eventually head athletic trainer, from what I call kind of good timing and dumb luck. But I had that role for about 5 years, and really liked working with college athletes, but after a while that schedule, that can wear on you. So I switched it up recently, went to Tupper Lake and working in for the hospital system up there, Adirondack Health. And that hospital system up there gave me a lot of good opportunities. Continued with in college, working with Paul Smith athletes. Also worked with high school kids, Tupper Lake high school athletes, and kind of in clinic setting things. Almost a more personal trainer role, but taking into medical history, taking that into account. Really enjoyed that, and actually found that I really liked working with high school kids. There's something about high school kids not only kind of maybe listening to you a little bit more than college kids. They're a little more open to some of your ideas. But there's also that idea that you can maybe get to them a little bit sooner, teaching them good strategies, good form, just better, healthy lessons overall. So recently I've taken a job working actually under a hospital, Lewis County General Hospital, but I'll be working once school is back in session with the South Lewis School District as the athletic trainer for their kids there. So a small school, actually, I think it's very similar to St. Lawrence Central in a lot of ways. But they're getting, trying to get ahead of the game with the introduction of a full-time athletic trainer to their district and to their program. And I'm really excited to see where we can put it. So that kind of brings me to where I am now. So that's it in a box.
So, okay, so I'll start off.
Yeah.
So you're going to be covering all sports, basically, whatever happens in that school district, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And, that's one of the things in terms of athletic training, especially at a high school level. You're going to see probably, if you see an athletic trainer at a high school, you're likely only going to see one. It costs money, but there is a benefit to having an athletic trainer there. And that's for this type of school with its size and how many athletes they have. It should go okay. It should go pretty well, considering most practices occur at the same time and that sort of thing. So
Go ahead.
I have a question that's in that same line. So when you were backing up a little bit, head athletic trainer at Potsdam State, at SUNY Potsdam, that was over all sports?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice.
So the athletic trainer position is, it's an interesting one. It's like, we call ourselves auxiliary staff in terms of when you're looking at any sort of athletics program. You've got your coaches, you've got your managers, all those people that Joey mentioned. We're part of that team too, a little bit. We're on the sidelines for the most part. I kid with my kids a lot that you never really want to see the athletic trainer, because if you are, you're likely injured or something's going on. But we do kind of roll into other areas in terms of strength and conditioning, prevention, all that stuff. So there is kind of a tie-in to where an athletic trainer can be more. But as an auxiliary staff, we're even just like your SID, sports information, that sort of thing. We're involved in all sports and all every team. A lot of times, especially at the college level, we'll have help. Obviously, I think we had a team of three athletic trainers at SUNY Potsdam when I was there. So we had different assignments, different teams that we worked directly with. But for the most part, any athlete could walk in and ask for help and whatever they needed.
Even with a staff of 3 at a SUNY Potsdam, that just seems like, a lot of athletes, potentially a lot of athletes for each person to.
You'll be stretched thin.
Yeah, wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, that's one of those traits of athletic training as a career that they really talk about. We actually have a lot of conversations about burnout in this career, because it happens. We're auxiliary staff to an extent. The hope is that coaches kind of look at us as humans and not always just like they have to be there, so we'll just do whatever we want. And that was kind of got to be a little bit of a struggle at Potsdam in my later years, and maybe it was just me just not being as like flexible as I used to be in my old age. So it's just one of those things that if you have a good team around you in terms of the people you work with, your colleagues and things, it doesn't seem like that huge of a task if everybody's working together to make it efficient. I think my time there, they've added a couple sports since I've left, but we had about 250 athletes, active athletes through a year. So we would, provide coverage for those athletes. And the hope is not every single one of them gets hurt, right? So while it's a big group of kids, The hope is we're not seeing every single one.
So, coming from a small school, and I know Joey's got a bunch of questions for you, but I figure I'll ask you a bunch.
I see her all the time. Go ahead, ask.
Okay, yeah. Coming from a small school, our trainer was basically the school nurse who was at that particular time assigned for that evening. Now, since I branched out down here, I broadcast Lake George games.
Mhm.
They have a full-time trainer
Yep.
on for all their sports. Now, do you find that most schools are going to that now, where they're hiring trainers instead of their nursing staff? Or
I hope we are like that. When taking
I'm
this
sure
job,
there's a need. There's definitely a need for it. So
yeah, and there's a big push. I mean, we have a lot of associations, athletic training associations, and New York State in particular is really pushing and creating a lot of resources to provide to schools as to why an athletic trainer can be helpful, even just not just taking care of kids, but you have that liability, you have missed school days because they're going to doctor's appointments. Like, we can save on all of that when you have an athletic trainer right there. I don't think we're seeing it at a lot of small schools. I think you're going to see it more at the bigger schools, the schools that maybe have the extra money. Sometimes you'll see an athletic trainer in a dual role, where maybe they teach a health class or something like that, and then do athletic training after school and that sort of thing. I think it's a matter of getting creative for a lot of schools to figure out how to bring an athletic trainer in, whether it's going through a hospital. Like, a lot of my experience has been, being kind of contracted out to a hospital, and just seeing where that can go. I think it's important. I think it'd be really great to see more of us on sidelines in high school, because you've talked to a lot of people who have gone from high school athlete to college athlete, and I have I have worked with those college athletes who are still dealing with high school injuries and the impact that has on their college career and their performance in college. When, if they had somebody there at the time, could that have been resolved and they come in ready to go, that's not even acute, like chronic stuff that just kind of hangs around, that lingers. I think that would also, we could be providing a more quality athlete after high school if they have athletic trainers there. So there's a lot of benefits if it can work out.
I know, and I could probably speak for Joey too, as a former coach, and he's coaching. I know when we have a student or an athlete that gets hurt, it usually takes away from us coaching, because we have to attend to the athlete, hoping that the nurse comes over and assists so we can get back to coaching. So I can see where this is a very, I think it's a very needed position, to be honest with you. That's
and we're trained. Our schooling is totally based on orthopedic injury and sport injury specifically. So we're trained to be able to evaluate and pick out what's happened here. Why is this athlete injured? Where a school nurse is going to have more of an overarching kind of background in medicine and that sort of thing. She's going to be able to read temperatures and other sorts of things that I'm not going to be as good at. But we're going to have our schooling just zeroed in on those types of things, which really helps us be maybe even a little more helpful to those coaching staff.
Seems to be a theme here of Ithaca and Cornell and Cortland people that are coming on the show. My brother is a graduate, 4-year graduate of Ithaca College, the Bombers, as a physical therapist.
Yep.
He owns 2 sports clinics in Boston. I'm hoping to get him on the show to tell the physical therapist side of the sports world. But it's kind of ironic that you were borderline whether or not you were going to be a physical therapist or a sports trainer. So
Yeah.
you gotta tell me, or you gotta tell everybody. There had to be a day there where you say, I got to pick one or the other. And
Yeah.
and how did you determine that decision?
Well, like I said, I had no idea what athletic training was before I saw it on this website, this list of college majors that were being offered. And I think I was on the Ithaca website, actually. And I thought physical therapy all the way. I had torn my ACL in my junior year of high school. I had surgery over my between my junior and senior years. I had, went to physical therapy, did the whole thing. And I thought, wow, this is, I could see myself doing this. I know I'm not the athlete. I know I'm not the athlete that, is going to be college level. I need to start thinking about what I like to do, but I love sports. I'm not going to be playing sports necessarily, but I love athletics. I love sports of all types, really. So I think that was kind of, as I'm reading this description online between physical therapy and athletic training, knowing that, athletic training really zeroed in on that population specifically, and, the descriptions standing on sidelines and that sort of thing, was really, and I think that was the kicker for me. I think it was, physical therapy is very broad, and it gets into a lot of other detail that athletic training doesn't necessarily get into. And the difference between a 4-year program and a 6-year program as well. Some of those are the key factors in my decision. Oh, that's a little bit changed now, but some of those at that time were some key factors for me, just being able to be on the sideline and continuing with sports, but in just a different way.
Curious question.
Yeah.
How many of your classmates had people that you were in the class with had a previous sports injury?
Oh, good question. I don't know. I actually was in a class that was very female heavy. A couple of my classmates weren't really sporty, which was unusual. Okay. I would guess probably 70% of them. That's just kind of based on knowing who they were and how active some of them were. But I do think it's one of those things that attracts somebody who appreciates athletics and maybe fitness and that all sorts of things. You don't necessarily have to play sports to want to be an athletic trainer. Athletic training now is going into a lot of different areas too. We're working with military, we're working in, performance art, we're working in corporate settings for rehab facilities to save on workers' comp. So athletic training isn't just about athletics, but I think for a lot of people, that's definitely the draw.
Yeah, I thought so. I thought the number would be high.
Yeah, that would be my guess. I can go and ask them, but.
I know I can say that, as I become an athletic director and became a coach that had some success and started getting around and out of the North Country, turf fields and music playing and all those things that make a game feel big. Whenever I've got an athletic trainer around, it makes it feel like there's a bigger, like this is a big deal school or a big deal area or a big deal event that I'm about to partake in. As Pete was saying, we go down to Lake George every year. I know I don't, I bring the med kit, but I don't have to because I'm going to have an athletic trainer right there for me. And we've used her, we've had situations that have popped up during the game where, geez, I don't have to go take care of this guy. Like Pete was saying, that is such a big deal. Mm-hmm. To be able to have the freedom of knowing if something happens to one of my kids, I don't need to go take care of his bloody nose or whatever.
Yeah.
So they are. I love it when you guys are on the game, and I think if I remember right, we played in Paul Smith's when you were working at Paul Smith's, didn't we?
Yeah, you did.
Like Toby was on JVs, and I think you did, and we got lucky enough where we happened to be going to Paul Smith's when you were working there. So.
Yeah, but I think I ended up not working the tournament though, right? I think they asked me to work the tournament. Yeah, and I think it was too expensive for them. they opted not to because the cost would have been too expensive to have me cover it. But I was there when you guys went up there, to play. But it's kind of like a load off the shoulders that you don't really realize is there until it happens, until an injury happens as a coach. You kind of forget that part. That's not something that's at the forefront of a coach's mind. So it is helpful to have that extra.
And I'd be lying, and I think 75% of the coaches would be lying if they told you, I'm going through the motions, just asking questions when something happens. I don't have any answers. Do you feel this? Does this hurt?
Yeah.
And I'm asking them, and I feel terrible because I know he's hurt, but I don't know a damn thing about. They can give me all the first aid training they want. Every 3 years, we're supposed to get an update. Well, and I don't care. They can keep me there for a week. Unless you do that on a daily basis, I don't.
Yeah.
You just don't. That's why.
And you're not practicing it every day either. Hopefully.
And we as coaches have two remedies: ice it or wrap it.
Tape and ice. Yep.
Tape, ice, elevate. Other than that,
it's a good place to start. You can't go wrong with tape and ice.
Just being
or just using good judgment. Hey, I don't think you should play anymore. Wait till you get that checked out. So.
Yeah.
Hey, that tape and ice is better than the military, which you said trainers work with the military.
Yeah.
Motrin and a bottle of water.
Yep.
Well, that's the military answer.
No, it is interesting that you bring that up. Just I have friends who are in the military and that sort of thing, or athletic trainers who are working within the military. There's a lot more at stake. So your choices of whether somebody can continue with their training or not are a little more, or a little, I guess, less conservative. I would say you have to be, you got to kind of be suck it up, buttercup, and here's what we can do for you, but you can't miss this. So
I've heard that.
Yeah. But yeah, and I know there's a lot of I've been introduced to a lot of different digital things that are trying to help coaches manage injuries on the sideline, which have, a good purpose in mind. I think one of them specifically was like a concussion evaluation. You can do it right on your phone. It's an app and all of that sort of stuff, which is a good tool. But as a coach, you don't have time to stop coaching to go and go through this list of screens and click through. It's a good idea, but it's like you said, it's tough. You don't really you can't be doing both at the same time. So
and we have a lot of teams, some of my teams is specifically, especially at the modified JV level, you don't have an assistant coach. So if something goes wrong, if I'm not around as the athletic director, my coach is handling it, and there's nobody coaching the team, one way or the other. Either that kid's suffering because he's coaching the team, or the team is suffering because he's taking care of the kid. So I'm hoping for the day that we all are as lucky as South Louis and other schools downstate, that it keeps creeping up here, that they'll realize some form. When you were at Tupper Lake, talk a little bit about your Tupper Lake experience, because that was just like an hour a day. You weren't with the teams, right? Games.
Yeah, it was an interesting way they designed their contract specifically. I think just so they could, at least have somebody. I wasn't there all day, so I was in the clinic most of the day, the physical therapy clinic, but 1 hour a day, Monday through Thursday. It was right after school, so 2 to 3, right before practice time. I would go over there to the high school. They have an athletic training facility right there. It's small, but it's very workable for what they need. And then any athletes who had any issues, whether it was a new injury or just something we had been dealing with, they needed their ankle tape before practice, things like that. We took care of that in that hour. And the game coverage was home football games. That's it. And then, we also, our physical therapy department also had 2 other athletic trainers employed as well. And they covered Saranac Lake High School and Lake Placid High School, among other schools, North Country Community College, et cetera, et cetera. but all kind of those Adirondack area. Oh, Ausable Valley was another one. All of the contracts for each high school was different. Lake Placid had, I think, Saranac Lake, I think, has 2 days a week versus all 4 that Tupper Lake had. You know, so it just kind of depended on what the school felt they needed and potentially what the school felt they could afford, but at least it was something. And that's where I say if schools can get creative to figure out ways to work and work with what monies they might have to put towards it. There's a lot of, you know, again, weight off the coaches' shoulders and weight off the nurses, school nurses' shoulders that can be alleviated. I think I would love to see, you know, Kent and Potsdam Hospital and their new St. Lawrence systems, that health system, you know, look into this as a potential, you know, because Section 10, yeah, they would love it. There's enough big schools there. You know, there's enough to feed something like that. So.
Now, the girl that does it down here for Lake George only entertains or only has to be on duty for home games. She doesn't do any traveling or anything. So is that going to be the same as what you're going to be doing, just taking care of the kids at home?
Yeah, I think we still have some things to work out in terms of our high contact sports, and at South Louis, that would mainly be football. But I think for the most part, just because there's always going to be a lot going on in terms of home games and that sort of thing. So to travel and lose me for whatever other home games might be going on might be a little too much. I think that's a lot. That's part of the design a lot, and that's mainly to kind of save the athletic trainer. Again, you know, that goes back to the burnout thing, because, you know, if you're expecting full practice coverage, home game coverage, and then travel coverage, I mean, that's a lot of time. So really, I think that's kind of to save your athletic trainer from, you know, having a little too much on their plate.
So I'm going to ask you a question that probably the other guys definitely won't ask, and I don't even know if it's right to ask, but I'm going to ask it anyway. But what?
I love when a question starts like that.
Yeah, oh yeah. Well, no. It's basically now we know that nurses have they're taken care of liability wise under the school umbrella. How does that work for therapists?
So that would be different for each kind of, however it's set up. So athletic trainers need to operate under a physician. That's a rule. In New York State, that's, you know, we are licensed healthcare professionals. Like I have to get a New York State licensure. I also have to do, you know, sit for a certification exam, all that sort of stuff. But once we're practicing, we have to be under some sort of physician. And that physician kind of signs off and says, you know, I give them permission to act as an athletic trainer, and I am their oversight. So for myself at Lewis County, it's the orthopedic office there. The doctor there is going to be my oversight physician. And it's not that I have to check in with him every day and say, this is what I saw. It's mainly that that doctor's office is kind of saying, hey, that she's working out of our purview kind of thing in these satellite areas. So for the most part, that's where that liability coverage kind of comes from. Again, you know, depending if the high school is hiring that athletic trainer specifically, they might have to, you know, work that into their budget somehow, or require that athletic trainer to get their own liability insurance, which an athletic trainer can also do. There's a lot of athletic trainers who hold their certification and maybe are doing another job. I have a friend who's an occupational therapist. She went on after school, after AT, to become an OT. But she'll do, you know, she lives down near Cobleskill and Hartwick. And so if they need, in Oneonta, if they need extra coverage, they can call her up and say, you know, can you come and cover this swim meet? And she, you know, she can be there, but she carries her own, you know, insurance, liability insurance for that, because she wouldn't be covered in the school in that instance. So kind of a mixed pot. Yeah.
Right. I hope that wasn't a weird question. I was just
not at all.
I was just kind of curious myself as to how does this get covered? Because you're necessarily not hired by the school, you're by the county or by the hospital, or how does?
So in my position right now, as it works, I'm actually an employee of Lewis County General Hospital. And so the school has entered into a contract with the hospital and requesting my services. So it's very similar to Tupper Lake, but South Louis is just requesting a full, August to June coverage. I'm there every day providing coverage for their sports. So I'm expecting, we'll see, I haven't done it yet, but I'm expecting, something like I go in at noon, stay till 8, end of practices, and on game days, I'm there for game days and that sort of thing, kind of going into the different fields and providing coverage that way. So, yeah.
Okay, well, that answers my questions.
Yeah.
I hope I didn't twist them too much. But,
No, not at all.
Okay,
No,
good.
no.
All yours, Joseph.
So, you mentioned now that you get to be around the high school athlete, and were you finding that when you were still with, especially SUNY Potsdam, but also Paul Smith, as you're getting older, you lose, do you find it that you lose a connection with, well, she's getting older. I mean,
Yeah, it is true.
We're all getting
we're all
older.
getting older.
Hi, Joe.
But the college kid stays the same age. And do you find that, as you were getting older, I know you were really close with a lot of your first teams when you got to SUNY Potsdam, but as you got older, I'm assuming you started to see that separation with the age, and probably dealing with high school athletes, it might be a little bit more consistent as a person is growing older. Is that your thought process? Or
Well, I think a little bit, yeah, there's definitely a switch at SUNY Potsdam. You could definitely feel kind of a switch in I don't know, how do I say this, generations, I think. I left SUNY Potsdam in 2016. So those last couple of years, those freshman classes coming in, I found that they were a lot more, what's the word? They needed a little more hand-holding through a lot of things. There were a lot of, whether it was paperwork process, we have to do all of that sort of stuff, making sure they get their physicals done. It became like a lot more of a headache to kind of get some of that stuff rocking and rolling with that age group. And, there was definitely a shift in kind of how coaches viewed some of their student athletes. So that was kind of changing as well. I really think my time with the Tupper Lake athletes, though, showed me kind of how high schoolers are a little more impressionable. There's an opportunity there to not only, kind of teach them something about not only like the sport they're playing, but how they can be better at the sport. And that can sometimes translate into work ethic and that sort of thing. Like, I think that's an important component of being a student athlete. It's not always just about the sport, but it's about learning how to balance all of that stuff and all of that sort of stress you go through. And high school age kids, I think, are under more stress than I was, for one. So I'm kind of excited about that opportunity to work with that age group. And I also think too, for myself, like I said, I didn't know what athletic training was. I'm excited to kind of teach this younger generation a little bit, for a small school setting, who otherwise would not know what athletic training is. This is a career you could do. I think that's kind of cool too. I know I taught with Tupper Lake. One of my roles was also teaching a sports medicine class. One of my students from there is actually enrolled at Brockport for athletic training now. So there's a little bit of like, oh, this is kind of cool, and they can go on from there. So I like that idea, that potential, working with the high school kids. It's not so much that the college kids got annoying. It was more a few more opportunities with the high school kids. So yeah.
So what about, Pete asks this question all the time of our coaches, so I'll ask you.
Yeah.
Was there a certain team, a one-year team that, boy, I really had, this was a fun team to be with, or, maybe that team had some big accomplishments, but boy, I really enjoyed hanging out with this team. Do you remember a certain team?
That's a good question. It's always, it's funny how things over the years, they kind of meld together. So I remember, I'll be in contact with my former athletes as people and kind of be like, wait, what year did you graduate? And you kind of forget that sort of thing. And I've listened to a bunch of your shows here, and I've heard people talk about, it's not always about the wins and stuff and all of that, but I would definitely, there was a women's hockey team with Jay Green at SUNY Potsdam. It was maybe, women's hockey came to SUNY Potsdam, I think around 2008. So a pretty young team. I would say it must have been 2011. That's a guess. But that hockey team, it was about 13 girls. It was a small team, and they were a part of the ECAC West. Women's hockey didn't have a SUNYAC conference. They were kind of broader. They played some SUNY schools, but you also had some private schools in there as well. But SUNY Potsdam not looked at as kind of a big hockey powerhouse, but for whatever reason, we had these 13 girls kind of coming together to kind of figure it all out. And, they're bruised and battered, and I'm seeing injuries. It was a busy year for me, but somehow we managed to get to, that second round of playoffs. First round of playoffs, we meet Elmira College, which is, they're usually first or second. It was Elmira or Plattsburgh. It was those teams going for first, for the championship in the conference. And we knocked Elmira out. It came down to a 2-1 game, I believe, and these girls just had put everything on the line to, end of the season, 13 girls against this powerhouse team, and the goalie had a stand on her head type of game and just managed to stop what she needed to stop, except for one, and the girls pulled it out. So that was a really exciting year just to see them kind of pull together and succeed in the way they did. Athletic trainers are usually supposed to be kind of, on the sideline in the background, just arms crossed, waiting for something to happen. But it was really hard working with a hockey team for me to do that. Hockey is my first love. And so, I was kind of, took over opening the door. I was probably more of a manager in some cases and, making sure the changes were as quick as they could be and the change ups and stuff. So that was really exciting. It really felt like a whole team effort there on that one. So.
That had to be somewhat stressful too, with only 13 girls, making sure that they're all healthy. Because
they weren't.
No, that's only a little bit over one line change. So that's.
I think we were rotating 3 defenders at that point, because we had 2 goalies, 3 defenders, and maybe two lines of forward.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty incredible what they pulled off. And I jokingly say they weren't healthy, but it really was. Some of them were being held together with tape. Some, we had to go through so many machinations of different tape. Like, does this help you? Does this hurt you? Does this, and I hate sometimes being in that position to be like, okay, you're gonna go out there and play, but when you've got a championship playoff game or whatever it might be, they're not going to take no for an answer. So we got to find something.
All right, so Joey sugarcoated that question, basically asked. So I'm gonna be
Sugar off.
I'm gonna I am. I'm gonna say, what was the biggest pain in the ass team? Because seriously,
too many to count.
No, but seriously, because it's different when you're an athlete or a coach. You can say what was good in a bad year and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But in your line of work, there had to be a pain in the ass team where people were always getting injured, and you got to be up to here saying, what the hell is wrong with you guys? So there's got to be one of those. There's got to be one of those years, Lisa.
It's not necessarily pain in the ass teams. It's more, sometimes you're going to get pain in the ass athletes, just in general. We call those, the athletic training room rats, for sure. They're kind of around all the time, and they need a little extra attention. All right, I can handle that. I don't necessarily know if there was a team overall that kind of was just, besides personalities, but from an injury perspective. And, the thing is too, when we see something like, if I'm seeing something like that, where, it's the start of season and I've already had, 5 hamstring strains, coach, we need to talk about whatever you're doing in the off season. And, this is ridiculous. What are you doing right now that you're pushing them so hard that I have 5 hamstring strains right now? We need to, kind of step back and take a look at why that's happening. So, when we get that type of pain in the ass situations, that's probably something we need to look at. But yeah, I've had my fair share of incidences with either teams or coaches. I've had coaches who will send athletes back in to argue with me. That's kind of the worst because, you know, you're putting the kid in the middle of the situation that, also, pull your pants up, come talk to me yourself kind of thing. But, so, I've kind of seen the good and the bad for sure.
Yeah, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I just
Yeah, you did.
okay. But anyway, in a roundabout perspective, though, it wasn't much the team is, but you're gonna have one of those years where you're having multiple injuries, and it's like, what the hell is going on? And is there something? Is it a full moon the whole season? I mean, or are we just doing something wrong? And I'm just wanting to hear that from your perspective. That's all.
Yeah, and and if in kind of the same vein as that, if we want to talk about Mom for a bit, she coaches swimming, or has recently retired from coaching swimming. Those swimming athletes sometimes can be a bear, man, because they're coming in, oh, my shoulder hurts. Okay, well, how long has it been bothering you? 6 months. Okay, well, you should have come in a little bit sooner, because now, so we'll definitely get a lot of those chronic injuries in some of those endurance sports, whether it's swimming. Track is another big one, track and cross country, where kids are starting to feel pain. And I say kids, and that's from all age ranges, but it's like a little nagging pain, but they're not coming in until, it becomes a huge everyday wake up with it, 6 weeks in type pain. And we see that a lot with some of those endurance sports and that sort of thing. But yeah, it's just to poke fun at swimming, because I know Joey loves to do that. So.
So speaking of pain in the butt, who was the AD when you were at Tupper Lake?
At Tupper Lake, I went through two. I had Dan Cook my first year, and then it became Dan Brown, of no relation.
Okay, no, I know both of those guys.
Yeah.
Did you have any interaction with Russ while you were there?
Yeah. Yep. I knew Russ well.
Okay.
He was a good advocate for me. We worked together closely as I was starting out. Like, he was kind of showing me around a little bit. He had just
he was the AD before them. Yeah.
Exactly. He had just kind of
Okay.
transitioned. So.
All right.
So I had the Dan.
So he wasn't a big pain in your butt.
No, because he didn't have to be. So he was.
Right. Okay.
Well, and another connection that you guys will be happy to hear. So, when I get my phone calls, every 3 or 4 months when Jerry Welch will call me, he always has to ask about Lisa Brown, because Lisa started at SUNY Potsdam when Jerry was still coming up here, especially for his summer camp. Was that the connection, Lisa?
Yeah.
And you were the athletic trainer for SUNY Potsdam basketball camp at one point.
Yep.
Nice.
For quite a few years, I did basketball camps. Camps are tough. Camps are they can be really long. But when Jerry would come up and give his talks at camp and stuff like that, he was just such a genuine guy. And he came in and he kind of always ready with a joke, always ready with some sort of and I think the reason he likes me so much is because I fell for his jokes one time. So I think that's why he's kind of attached himself a little bit. It was he told me that they were putting a subway in between Clarkson campus and SUNY Potsdam campus. It was going to be underground tunnel, this whole thing. And not that I fell for it. But I was like, really? I maybe gave in to it a little bit too much. So I think he knew he had me then. So.
He asks about you every time he calls, so it's pretty much a regular thing. And but
yeah, he got me a nice office decoration too on one of his visits. It's a stuffed Bears logo that I still have. I actually have it in my window now because it helps me figure out which apartment building is mine. So that's helpful. I put that in the window. So I think of him fondly.
Actually, I'm surprised he didn't bring you up during his show when he came on.
Yeah.
That's how much he likes her. So, you mentioned Mom and so she's going to be the only one in this of our family of 4 that just refuses to come on this show, even though she's probably the greatest and most successful out of the 4 of us. You know, talk a little bit about your mom, because she won't do it.
Yeah.
And I don't want to, because I'll end up getting punished because I have to be here every day. You're not here every
You got a
day.
level
So,
there.
yeah.
Yeah,
So-
no, I was actually, I was thinking about kind of in knowing we were going to sit and talk, and I was like, oh, I probably should think about, oh, well, okay, high school sports. What, you know, when I was in high school, what sport I was playing soccer. You know, a lot of my high school teams weren't that good. The team that was good though when I was in high school was the swim team, and that was when Mom was coaching. Those were her years of like, you know, undefeated seasons, and you know, sending, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8 girls to states to compete in states and that sort of thing. So it was always kind of cool to have your mom as a coach, and you know, she's in all my yearbooks every year and that sort of thing. So that's always nice to look back on and say, oh, that's my mom. But yeah, she not only is a coach accomplished, she was inducted into the Hall of Fame, and she was nice enough to let me kind of you know, provide that speech for her beforehand. And so I got to kind of look at some of her stats and see, you know, she was an athlete. She was a really strong athlete, and not just at the high school level. She swam at SUNY Potsdam as well, and was successful there. So it was kind of neat to be there to give her that Hall of Fame induction, that award, and all that sort of stuff. But she's definitely will not. Yeah, she won't come on the show. She's not going to talk about herself and that sort of thing. She's humble like that, but you know, she deserves the accolades once in a while, even if she doesn't think she does. She definitely does, because I know for a fact, just knowing my friends who are on her swim team, or even if they weren't my friends, just other high school kids. She was a tough coach. There's no doubt about it, but I know she was a good coach. They even said, you know, they would tell me that, oh, your mom, she's making us do that. Yeah, well, you know, probably good for you. So she's not gonna let things slip. She's had not only successful teams, but I think one of the important things with coaching is, especially at the high school level, not just successful teams, but creating successful adults. I think that's a huge part of it. Are you impacting their life in a way that's going to help them, you know, and to know the amount of kids and girls that she's coached that continue to contact her, be in contact with her, I think shows you know, she deserves some of those accolades to tell her, hey, she's doing a good job. So, yeah.
My guess is that if Pete and Dave asked her to come on, and she was just allowed to talk about you, me, Toby, and all of her swim teams, she probably would come on. But if she got to come talk about herself, she won't do it. So, but
no, probably not.
So, and that leads to, you know, we gotta start wrapping things up here. But that leads to, so, you know, Pete and Dave, we have the so in my household we have the Ithaca Cortland connection, with Toby going to Cortland, Lisa going to Ithaca. You know, they don't get along to begin with. And now, you know, and so we have to make a point. At some point, we'll go see a Cortica jug. Hopefully, when life is normal again. I hope to do that before Toby graduates from Cortland. I think that would be pretty cool to finally see a Cortica jug, and you know, to think that your mom is the proud mom of a Ithaca grad and a son going to Cortland, the you know, 2 rival schools. Kind of cool when you think about it. You know, it didn't click with me when Toby was picking Cortland that, you know, you'd have that little little, you know,
rivalry going.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. No, it's there. It's real. I will.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I was hesitant. I even got him a Cortland something. I felt dirty just buying it.
Hey, you ever visit Rogan's?
Yeah, I visited Rogan's.
I got to ask everybody that goes to Ithaca. Oh, yeah. Many pies I've had there. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. And you know, it's for a simple gas station. It knows what it's doing. For sure.
Oh yes, it does. Yeah, halfway down the hill. Yeah.
So we've learned in this show that there's a family rivalry with the colleges, and that Joey is the least athletic member of the family.
Summed it right up. I think that's a great way to end. There you go.
Nothing else more to say there.
If we're going based on my capabilities right now, absolutely.
Yeah, we don't want to talk about right now. Yeah. No.
Katie's gonna be watching this, you know.
Yeah.
You know that for a fact.
So I have to say this, not trade, but here's the difference between an athletic trainer and your normal, person that's going to cringe when you see the rolled A. The athletic trainer. So Lisa and I I don't think we were together, but I don't know if you remember Louisville basketball in the NCAAs a few years back. Toby was in. You already know, Dave. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Kevin Ware with the.
Yep.
Bone.
Mm-hmm.
Compound fractures. That's called when the
Open.
bone.
Yep. Open.
Yeah.
Yep.
We're all freaking out with the heebie-jeebies, and Lisa's just solid right there. She says, I love watching games with Lisa because, you need to do this. You need to do that. So,
that's a good pastime, too, to sit and watch sports and be like, I bet they're going to come back and say he had so-and-so injury. But that was I actually, in my class, I add that image. I have that in there. But I also have, I click and then it covers it up because I know that, a lot of people don't like that. But, that's real. That
one was rough.
Oh, that was real.
So have you ever had an injury like that? Have you had?
I've never had an open fracture, knock on wood. A lot of dislocated shoulders. I'm able to relocate those. It's one of my favorite things to do.
Just do a flick pain on somebody. I get it. Yeah.
Oh no, but they're so thankful after. They are so thankful after. I actually at one of those camps had it was when they were still using the basketball nets that were movable, those mobile ones that could roll around. A kid got his leg stuck under it, but then somebody else landed on. Yeah, there it is. That face landed on top of him, and that fractured right through. So that was one of the worst fractures I've had, actually. And that was a while ago. But yeah, I've seen some stuff. I've seen some things.
Yeah, when trying not to be crude about this, when you see a guy sees another guy get hit in the groin, and everybody, it's like, oh. I've had 4 ankle operations. I've had 2 reconstructions. I've had a reconstruction on each ankle and then a subsequent surgery on each ankle. So when I see a rolled ankle, that's how I feel. I'm like, yeah.
You know that feeling, and I feel you on that one. As somebody I've gone through 3 knee surgeries at this point.
There you go.
I just need to see somebody with bad form, like, if they're jumping and their knees go in like that, and they don't even need to be injured, but I'm just like, oh, we need to fix that immediately because I don't want you to have the life I've led.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, some of those cringeworthy moments. Yeah.
No, thanks.
Thanks.
No.
And there's groin injuries. Nobody wants to see me walking over for this.
Pete says, I'm out.
Well, it's one of those things, it's going to happen. You just can't look away.
Right.
It's like, let's see that again. Yeah. Replay. And after the 10th time, it's like, okay.
Joe Theismann.
Another good one. Another good one.
That was like the first one, the first famous one that was shown.
Yeah,
you're right. That was really the first bad one that
I. And they cut to commercial. They were like, "No, we are not doing this." Yeah.
Lawrence Taylor just waving on the. Come on, you gotta fix what I did here.
Yeah, knew immediately. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good one.
Well, Lisa, I want to thank you for coming on the show. This, like Joey says, the non-sport ones, and this is sport related, but the one where we educate ourselves more because we don't know more about it are definitely the fun interviews. This has been a great interview. It really has.
Oh, it's great.
Good. I'm glad. Yeah, really. I had fun too.
Oh, good. I appreciate you coming on. It was an honor having you on.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, everybody. ESS, Empire State Sports and Wise Guys Sports Talk Show. We're going to let her wind down tonight for our co-hosts, Joey Riem, Dave Bartlett, and Pete Goslaw, and our special guest, Lisa Brown. They were all saying good night and stay safe, everybody.